Welcome back to the Breaking Down Walls podcast. I'm Jill Barrile, founder of Bare By Barrile, intimacy coach and boudoir photographer. I'm here with my co-host, Natalie, trauma-informed somatic coach and yoga instructor. This is the Breaking Down Walls podcast, where we question the rules, challenge the norms, and talk about the things that most people avoid. Okay, so let's be honest for a second. Have you ever felt something in your body and had no logical way to explain it? A shift, a pull, a knowing, something you couldn't see but you knew was there? Today, we're talking about it. We're diving into energy work, or what a lot of people like to call woo-woo. We unpack what that actually means, where these practices come from, and why this kind of work has been dismissed and is now making a huge comeback. This conversation isn't about convincing you of anything. It's about opening the door and letting you decide what resonates. So let's break down some walls. Hey, Jill.
Hey, Nat.
Guess what we're talking about today?
I don't know. Tell me.
We're going to talk about energy work today.
Ooh, I've heard of it.
You've heard of it?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
What have you heard?
I've experienced energy work. I heard that it is kind of mystical. I've heard that not everyone's down with it. I've heard that some people love it. Some people have a big woo for it, a big woo-woo.
How would you describe woo-woo, Jill?
Yeah, what is woo-woo, right? I feel like we do hear that term a lot. I think woo-woo is the things that we can't necessarily explain, but that's something that we feel. It's something that may help us in some way. It might be like a belief that we have. It may make us feel good, but I feel like there's not a lot of tangible hold on, I can visually see it type of thing. What about you? What do you think? I feel like it's kind of a strange.
Well, it's funny because I feel like woo-woo was originally kind of coined as almost a derogatory way to explain energy work. Like people would be like, oh, that's too woo-woo for me. Like that's too mystical, magical, like it's magical thinking. It's outside of scientific understanding. It's not tangible enough. So it's just too woo-woo for me. And I think that's how people started describing it when they felt discomfort or resistance towards energy work. But over time, I feel like a lot of energy healers and people who do dabble in these realms have sort of started reclaiming that phrase and being like, yeah, I'm kind of woo-woo. Like it just, I can't always explain what I do or how it works, but you'll definitely feel it. You'll know it when it's happening.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So how big do you feel your woo-woo is?
How big is my woo-woo? So
do you have a big woo? Are you big for the woo, or do you feel like you're a medium woo?
So woo? I think I'm a grounded woo-woo is how I like to think of it. Because I think I've always had a pretty healthy skepticism towards energy work, even though I've been an energy worker technically for 14 years now. I was attuned in Reiki in 2012. I have always felt very intrigued by it because I'm such a highly sensitive person that I've been perceiving energy long before I knew what it was or how to work with it in any way. But I would also am very aware of the fact that humans can convince ourselves of a lot of things, and we have a lot of big imaginations, and not everything that you see is real. Not everything that you perceive is real. And so I've definitely gone through phases where I could feel like I was in a relationship with energy in some way, whether I was perceiving it or curious about it or whatever. And then I would go through periods where I was like, it's all in my head. It's all just, they don't have scientific backing for this. So I'm building a wall essentially.
Yeah.
And then I would go through another period of life where the wall would come down or something would happen. And I would be like, wait a minute, maybe there's actually something here. And so if you ask me how big is my woo, I would say that if something does feel exceptionally woo-woo to me, I will step back from it and kind of try to tinker with it and be like, what is actually happening here? And I'm always asking questions because I'm not someone to believe things blindly. I'm not someone to just take things at face value. I want to understand a deeper meaning of what is going on. So as I share a little bit more about my energy work during this podcast today, it is important to express that everything that I'm sharing is through that lens of what I understand so far. And it comes from me not just having personal experiences and not just listening to the experiences of others, but actually asking the deeper questions of like, okay, on a scientific, microcosmic level, what's going on? What is the quantum physics of all of this? So I am woo in that I am very open to recognizing that human senses cannot take in everything that is happening. I am woo in that I believe there's way more going on than what we can see, hear, smell, feel, and touch. And I'm also grounded in the fact that there will probably be more technology that needs to come together before we can really have a concrete understanding of what we're perceiving.
Oh, that's a really great. I love how you put that, because I think having that little bit of skepticism allows us to ask the questions and to have a better, like you said, a better understanding of like how you're working with the energy as well as how it's working for you. And I love when we can bring science into this sort of place where things may not feel so concrete, because there is some science that does back energy work. And like you said, I do think there is still a lot of work to be done and maybe technology that to be built. I love that idea that maybe we can be in a world later on down the road that there is something else that we're going to be more connected to in that way. While we're here too, like I would say for anyone that's like doesn't know, like I think the word energy work comes like around a lot and maybe people don't actually know what it is. How would we even define energy work, and like what would be in that category, I guess, of energy work, would you say?
I think there's a lot of things that can be in the realm of energy work, and some of it is actually medical. Like there is energy work done within the medical field of acupuncture, acupressure, anything that has to do with like electroshock, anything like that is literally energy that you are putting through your body. Even like scans, like CT scans and things like that, like we're not necessarily using the energy to heal, but energy is required to be able to see within the body, and we can create an image on a screen. I think when people say things like, oh, I don't believe in energy work, it's kind of like, okay, that's interesting. What do you feel about Wi-Fi? Like, how do you feel
Right.
about cell signals? Like, how do you feel about satellite signals, you know, as we talk on our
Yeah.
smartphones all day, every day and exchange information? So just because like there's so many different varieties of how the energy can be perceived and utilized in different technologies, at the end of the day, like there is ample evidence that there is energy that is being utilized and worked with in order to create changes in how we think and how we feel and how we can potentially heal on like a cellular level. So there is like that medical side of things, acupuncture, acupressure, as I mentioned. But what I tend to focus on more is things such as Reiki and some of the older traditions of energy healing. So energy healing has been around long before we had all of the fancy equipment that we have now. And it's something that is basically a universal belief and a universal practice that has been around for at least 3,000 years, if not more.
Yeah. That's so interesting that like as you're saying that, I was thinking about frequency. Like I love thinking about frequency of like the radio, and that's like I think a lot of people turn to that as like explaining energy sometimes, right? So like we tune into different frequencies of radio, and it kind of feels similar with energy, right? And I love bringing in the idea that we already are using energy like in our world when it comes to, yeah, electricity, Wi-Fi, like in our everyday, there is energy being used, I guess. And so when we think about it just like in our bodies, it for some reason there feels like there's this wall up, even though we are using it to move our cars. Like there's like momentum, right? That's energy in a sense. So it's interesting. I'm kind of curious on like this wall, like how did this wall do you think got built? Because it clearly has been around longer than most of us can comprehend, maybe.
Yeah, there's been a collective wall that was built up. But before I talk about it, Jill, where is your wall for
Mm.
energy work?
Yeah, I feel like I feel real similar to you, but I don't have as much experience in it. Um, I have a very deep curiosity for what else is out there. I think especially as I've gotten older, I've been more in tune with my own body and noticing these subtle shifts in my even like personality of energy. Like if I'm feeling like I feel angry, that feels like an energy to me. And so I think the deeper relationship I've had with myself, the more of a less of a wall I've put up. And similar to you, I feel like I worked with energy at a young age and not really realizing it until like kind of being older and be like, oh, that was me kind of like maybe playing. Like I think we kind of do that as kids anyways. And so there's probably I don't think I have a wall up. I think there are things that I feel drawn to, such as things like Reiki and like even parts of yoga, like a meditation, where I do feel like in tune with that energy. And I feel like there's a lot I don't know about. So that's what I'm curious, especially to get in today, because I think there's a whole world of things I'm not familiar with that I think I would really enjoy learning about. I have a lot of curiosity around it. And I have had it help me. And so I don't know that I have a wall, but I don't think I'm on the other side of the wall. So I feel like maybe my wall is glass. Like I have a glass wall up, or even a door, because I've dabbled in some energy work myself, in learning like Reiki 1 and 2. And so I felt the presence of it. So I would say that's where I'm like sitting at this moment. So my woo is grounded. My walls are clear and curious to see if like I would actually want to bring them down even more, or not. I don't know.
Yeah, perfect. I love that. That's an excellent starting point. And I'm excited to talk about this more because it is something that has the potential to be really, really powerful, especially for people who maybe haven't fully dove into it or who have always been like you, Jill, like curious, but have never gotten that Reiki session or have never signed up for that, particular energy work because there was that skepticism there. I think it can be
Mhm.
fun to sort of just play with different ideas. What's interesting now that we're talking about energy as a whole, we are feeling energy all the time without even realizing it. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately been like, oh God, I don't want to be here? Like,
Yes. Yes. I feel like you can't. Like I've been in places, especially when we're at shopping for our home. I remember
yes,
going into a house that we were like, oh, it's really beautiful. And like, like it had a lot of the things that we would want, but the energy in there was so dark. And I'm like, I feel like I would have to have saged this place like 100 times over because it was so dense and it gave me a stomach ache, actually.
yeah, people leave energetic footprints. And so
Mm.
there's a very good chance that you were feeling into some energy that had been lingering in that house. But then can you also think of times maybe when you were out in nature where you just felt absolutely amazing and connected and like soaking something in that just felt delicious energetically?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I'm trying to think of a specific time. I think a lot of times it happens when I travel, probably because my walls, all the walls, are usually down. I like the one instant thing that came to me was when we were in Peru, being in the mountains. I feel like that has its own energy field, especially being there where there's so much history and practice with a lot of energy work, especially in Cusco where we lived. And I was even thinking about Thailand, like when we were there as well. And like the land there held like such a peace to me. Like I have never experienced such peace like I did actually on that land. And I would say that was like an energy that was there, like that they put into the soil in some way or another. Ooh, I just got goosebumps actually saying that.
I think there's probably going to be a few moments of goosebumps. It tends to happen when we talk about energies.
Yeah, and that's actually something we could talk about, like too, is like when people have that sensation, like what happens in their bodies when they maybe are starting to work with energy. There is like usually a feeling that I would say that comes up or doesn't.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this concept of different places having different frequencies and making us feel different ways, this is a great example of something that anybody can feel, regardless of how sensitive you are. Everybody has had an experience of arriving somewhere and feeling like, nope. And then also arriving somewhere and being like, oh my God, yes. And it's a feeling. And so this feeling, especially the really good ones, the ones that you feel in nature, the ones that you feel when you're deeply connected, when you're in a meditative state, when you do breath work, when you're surrounded by people you love, these sorts of frequencies can be cultivated, they can be worked with, and they can be shared. And this is where a lot of the energy work that I do comes from. So a little bit of history about energy work. The idea that there's a life force running through and around the body is probably one of humanity's oldest and most universal beliefs. So everywhere on the planet, even before humans were as connected as they are today, there was this concept of energy flowing within and around the body. So some of the examples of that are China. There was the concept of qi, which is the vital life force that flows through the body along pathways called meridians. And so this is where acupuncture, Tai Chi, and Qigong, these are all about like moving and balancing and cultivating that energy. And then in India, around the same time, 3,000 plus years ago, I think it goes back at least to 5,000 years, there was the concept, and still is the concept, of prana. So that is the Sanskrit equivalent of qi, that breath or life force energy. And this is where the chakra system comes into play, where there's these 7 energy centers that run along the spine. And so this is also one of the major frameworks, ancient frameworks, that is used in modern energy work. I personally rely on the chakra system a lot because I was able to perceive the chakra system before I even knew what it was. And so that's a story we can maybe go into later, but it's such a powerful tool for working with deeper layers of energy within the subtle body. In ancient Egypt, the healers worked with what they called ka. So that's a life force or energetic double of the physical body. There's the indigenous cultures all over the world. So shamanism has been part of virtually every tradition worldwide. And there was some version of energy healing. There was always an idea that illness can have a spiritual or energetic root, and that a healer can work with that invisible realm in order to restore balance. And then the last one is ancient Greece. So Hippocrates, who is the father of medicine, he even wrote about a force flowing from healers' hands, and helping that, like using their hands to heal people just with energetic forces. So this was something that was so widely accepted, widely utilized for the entire last several millennia of human history until the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. And this is when the wall went up. And so essentially what happened is the church started to target these healers. And so healers, herbalists, and those who were working with unseen forces were increasingly labeled as witches, heretics, or charlatans. And there started to be a prosecution of these folk healers, most of whom were women. And this is directly tied to the suppression of body-based and energetic healing traditions. So this is the point in history where there ended up being a split between what was considered legitimate medicine, in quotes, and folk healing, also in quotes. And this particular wall that got built around 500 or so years ago, it still shapes people's skepticism today. So even though we're seeing a resurgence and we're seeing a reclaiming of these old traditions, there is still this ingrained thought process from the church that for some reason this type of healing was not legitimate. And I'm wondering, because we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, Jill, why do you think that was? What do you think that was about?
I mean, I think it was control, like 100%. And, like, because I grew up very, in the Catholic Church. Like, I went to all Catholic schools. I also grew up in a home that practiced tarot. And so I never understood why that was something that was demonized by one when they both existed. And so it was always strange to me, like learning about both very simultaneously as a child. But I think there was that sense of, well, it doesn't fit our agenda. So like, we're going to either do away with it or make people feel bad. I feel like it creates shame in the body. If I'm, after a while, it's like, this is what they're giving people shame for practicing something. So their agenda can grow and become more powerful and controlled. And, if people are feeling really good in their bodies, they're not needing something probably like religion or maybe not religion so much, but like certain practices that keep people in line, I guess I could say. So that's my take on it anyways.
Yeah, I think so. And I think too that the church sort of established that there's one right way and there's only one right way. There's one right way to heal. There's one right religion to follow. There's one set of rules that are going to get you to heaven. There's only one way to be a moral and right human being. Yeah. And with that consolidation of what is good and what is right, it makes everything else seem bad or wrong. And so unfortunately, that ended up washing a massive label on all of these incredible and powerful ancient traditions and healing practices that had been established for so long and had been considered effective for so long. All of a sudden, it was no longer moral to practice these things. And so they unfortunately went underground a lot of time.
Even as you're saying that, like my skin's getting like so angry, I feel like, because I get very skeptical when things are like so controlled and they do create so many walls. It's like, well, what do you want me to see over there? Instead of making it like the walls are here to protect you or make you safe, it actually makes me feel really uncomfortable not being able to see the big picture more. And so, especially like as we are now, where we actually are in a world where both are existing more prevalently, I would say, and people are starting to question what like feels best for them, I guess.
Yeah.
Although there's still a lot of that shame or like suppression that we do see today, especially in the West, I would say.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I'm so grateful for is the establishment of Reiki, which you and I have both practiced or do practice. So Reiki ended up coming on the scene in Japan in the 1920s. So between the Renaissance and I don't want to say creation of Reiki because it wasn't created, but basically like the rediscovery or the popularizing of Reiki, there were moments in history during those 400 or so years where it felt like the energy healing tried to come up from underground, and then it kind of got stomped down by different forces. And I think that the energy healing in the East didn't necessarily experience the same level of scrutiny as in the West, because in the East, Chinese medicine has been going strong for a long time. And I think that the acceptance of the subtle energy body was never really like completely put underground in the same way that it has been over here. But in the 1920s, there was the establishment of Reiki, which is essentially a healing practice that has to do with chi or ki, Reiki. It's either ki or chi, depending on the language, or ka in Egypt.
I was gonna say, Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that they all kind of have this little, except for in Sanskrit, it's prana, but but essentially there was a group of healers in Japan who had established an attunement process for chi energy. And so within this I'm getting chills, here we go. Within this attunement process, there were special symbols, the Reiki symbols that would be administered to the person. So it was kind of like a rite of passage in a way. You and I have both been attuned in Reiki. There's 3 different levels of Reiki attunement. And so essentially a Reiki master who carries this particular frequency has the capacity to pass the frequency on to the next person, to their student of sorts. My Reiki attunement process was back in 2012, and I was attuned by someone who was a nurse. And so she was very, very passionate about, like, she was an operating room nurse. And she was very passionate about getting as many people attuned in Reiki as possible, because to her, this is crucial, and this is something that humans really need to be able to tap into and share with each other, especially because there's a lot of darkness, there's a lot of shadows in our world, there's a lot of negative energies too. And so the more of us that can sort of like wield the light and use it in an empowering way, it can really help the frequency of the planet and of society as a whole. So she had stories of where she would go into an operating room to do her work. She could feel that there was stuff going on. So she would do all of her symbols in the corners of the room, and she would basically shift the energy field of the operating rooms. And she would have doctors and nurses who knew nothing about what she was doing being like, what the hell did you just do? Like, what are you doing? And I feel like I get that too when I work on people, like especially people. There's this one client that I had who's a scientist, and so she's very, very black and white and numbers oriented. And when she came to me for an issue, I said to her, I was like, so why me? Why did you decide to come to me and not like a physical therapist or something like that? And she was like, I trust you and I want to see what you got. So I was like, okay, sure. So I did an energy session with her, and at the end of it, she was like, I'm a scientist, so I want to understand what that was so badly. I think it's better if I just let it be. But I just love that. I love that this can be utilized in so many areas, and even people who are extremely skeptical to it can still end up feeling it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I love that you learned from someone that was very much in the medicine field and like learned about the human body on a very physical level. And then her then bringing in energy work to the human body because she knows there's something deeper or beyond just the human body. I think that is so cool. Like, and
it's super cool. I'm always trying to find the intersection between science, spirituality, and psychology. I feel like that is where so much juice and understanding lies. Like when you can find the place where it all intersects, oh my God, there's just so much literal magic there, I think.
Yeah. Well, can you break down what exactly a chakra is by chance? Because I think anyone that like hears that word, we hear that like a lot, I think now, even like there's, I think we get in like in not marketing necessarily, but like even in stores, you'll see things that are like related to the chakra system. And we hear that word a lot more. I know there's even chakras like on the planet. Like, so it really is like energy centers, right? It's like something along those lines.
Yeah, it's different frequencies that are existing within our bodies simultaneously. So the original concept of the chakra system is that there are 7 main ones that run down our spine. There's actually over 200 throughout our entire body, but there's 7 main ones within the body. In my experience as well, and in my understanding, we do have 5 additional main chakras. One is underneath our feet, and then there's an additional 4 above our heads. So that is like the entire column from top to bottom is 12, but the ones that reside physically within us, there are 7. And so each of these energy centers are correlated with a different area of the body and with a different frequency. So they end up appearing as different colors. So from the bottom to the top, it's as though it's the colors of the rainbow. So starting at the root, we have an energy center at the base of our spine called the Muladhara chakra. And this is a red energy center that helps connect us to our most physical selves. So this is the frequency of our physicality, of our very tangible human body. This is also the densest energy, the heaviest energy that we have. The one that's below our feet, I feel is important to mention. It's not talked about as much, but I do feel that that is sort of our energy center of duality. That is the energy center that tells us we're separate and keeps us in the illusion of separateness. It like anchors us to our current reality.
Ooh, that's really interesting you said that, because I haven't had a Reiki session done in over a year, I'd say. And I actually had one, not even knowing we were doing this topic, just a couple days ago. And she was at my feet, and she was like, I was at your feet for a really long time. And the whole time, like, it was so strong there. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know why it would be, but I didn't really know about that other chakra below the feet, actually. But my feet tend to always be my most like, I feel the most when it comes to this stuff. So that's really cool.
It's super cool. A lot of the things that I know about the energy below and above are more experiential for me. So I can't really go into like a whole, this is what everybody thinks about these things. These are just things that I have personally experienced in working with these particular energies. So we kind of have like the part at our feet that anchors us to reality, that anchors us to duality. Then we have at our tailbone, we have the most physical part of ourselves. So the part that is anchored to our bodies. The next one up is an orange color, and this one is associated with our sacrum, which is this little cross-shaped bone a little bit above the tailbone. And this one is associated with the element of water. It's all of the liquids within our body, our fluidity, but also our creativity. It's also associated with the sexual organs. So basically like literally our ability to procreate, to birth things into the world. And it's also an emotional center too. There's a lot going on in that second chakra. A lot of women usually need quite a bit of work there, just because of different experiences and of what we've been told as creators, as life bringers. There's been some interesting like societal energies that can get stuck there. And then as you move up to your solar plexus, which is kind of around the region of the belly button, there is our solar plexus chakra. And so this is associated to our fire. This is associated with our digestion, with our power, and with our self-esteem. So it's like, I feel a lot of the time that the second chakra is sort of where ideas and creativity is birthed, and then like the power center is where we like give it to the world, like where we are motivated to move it forward and to like actually I always picture us like taking steps forward. It's always just forward motion, and it's very masculine. It's a very masculine energy center. Then you go up to the heart center, which is of course within the heart space. In most cases, they will label this as green. I perceive it as green and also pink. And I think that in my experience of working with these energies, I think that it's because the heart is a very balanced, like when it's healthy, it's very, very balanced. And it has both this masculine and feminine energy to it. There's the love, there's the gratitude, and then there's also the healing elements of the heart. So this is associated with air. It's also associated with the breath in our lungs, and it's also the very center of these 7 chakras. So the lower chakras, the 3 lowest chakras, tend to be more focused on like who we are physically as people, right? And then we get to the heart, and now we're starting to kind of associate more with others, with what is outside of us. It's that space of connection. It's the space of I love you and you love me. And this is like where we're going to start exchanging energy. In my experience, it also tends to be the biggest energy center for most people who are connected, who are in the space where they feel like connected to love. They feel like they are connected to the universe. There's a big juicy energy there for a lot of people. And then if you move up a little bit more to the throat chakra, this is blue, and this is associated with our community, with our ability to communicate, with our ability to express ourselves, to speak and be heard, to share ideas, to come together around different topics. Like, who can we become together? Who are we as a connected species, but also connected to the other beings that live on this planet, the plants and trees, and how do we express ourselves and also acknowledge and take in expression. Then we move up to our third eye, which is one of my favorite energy centers to play with, because this is when we start going outside of just the five senses of the body, and we start perceiving with our sixth sense, with our intuition. What are we experiencing beyond just thinking, feeling, seeing, smelling, and tasting? And what do we do with that information? How can we filter it through in the most honest sense, in the most pure sense, in the most inquisitive sense? We ask ourselves, what's out there, right? And then at the very top, we have our crown chakra, and the crown is usually white or purple, again, depending on who you ask. The third eye is indigo, by the way. And so with this crown chakra, now all of a sudden we're connecting up. We're connecting to the universe. We're connecting to our higher self-consciousness, our spirit guides, wisdom, just the information that goes beyond just what we can think and feel and perceive within our human body. And I think that that is one of the biggest gifts that the chakra system can offer us. It can offer us an alternative to only relying on our five senses, and actually beginning to perceive what else is available, what is beyond just our dinky little human bodies.
Thank you for telling us about that. I feel like I knew a lot of it, but it's a really nice reminder. And as you're saying it, like, I could feel my body sort of like lighting up. And I'm curious, even when people listen to this, like, what happens in their body when they're hearing this? Because a wall may automatically go up. And even an invitation to like get curious about that rather than rejecting it, I think can, just teach yourself about yourself at the end of the day. Learn more about yourself. I wanted to mention too, because I feel like, sometimes energy gets like a rap of like, this could be dark. And I feel like, especially with Reiki is it's only loving energy flowing from you. And I think that's something that we can kind of speak to, is that Reiki doesn't work with dark energy, right? Would you say?
Oh yeah. I wouldn't even know how that would. Yeah, it's funny because like I don't even have words for that, because it's just such a. Yeah,
Here.
I'm not gonna say it. It isn't. There is. Oh my God! See, no words.
And that's interesting, right? Like, that's what's coming up, is like, in my opinion, it's like, because it doesn't even relate to it. Where I feel like with Reiki, from what I was taught, and again, mine was quite minimal. Like, I did 1 and 2, but my practice is quite small, just on myself, really. But how I learned it is that like the Reiki comes in through you. And when I hear Reiki, it's like, also, I understand it as love, like love coming into you and going into the other person. And that's in the frequency you're in, is divine love, maybe. And it's not even like, there's no way that like a darkness can come through, even if I'm feeling wonky or depressed or, contracted. Reiki still can flow through you, or you may not be able to even give it, from my understanding. Maybe.
Yeah, Reiki it's pure life force, right? It's pure life force. And I think that the fundamental truth of energy is that darkness doesn't exist. It's only the absence of light. So when you are practicing Reiki, you are literally just shining a light into someone's energy field at the most fundamental sense. And so it's not about a battle of light and dark, or is there a risk of there being a dark energy? dark isn't a thing. There's just a lack of light. And so with Reiki, it's literally just shining a light.
Oh, I like that visual. It made me think like you're putting like a flashlight in those energy centers to like light it up so we can see what's there.
Kind
In a
of feels
sense.
that way sometimes. Yeah, except it's through the hands. So
Right.
when I'm practicing Reiki, what I normally feel is that I've been practicing a lot lately, which I'm so grateful for. And so with practice, it's basically instantaneous that I can get into a Reiki energy. I'm opening up as we speak, actually, and it's really helpful for being able to speak about it a little bit more. But essentially what's happening is I'm opening up that channel that I just talked about with which all of the chakras are connected to. I am connecting downward entirely to the earth, and I'm connecting upward entirely to source. And then I'm creating this channel into the heart center and then out my arms and into my hands. And so that energy can flow wherever it is that I am directing it, which is normally the person in front of me who's lying on the table.
Yeah.
And what's been interesting is that as I've practiced this more and more, I have found that I don't have to do much other than hold it. When I first started, I always felt like, oh, I need to direct it. I need to show it where to go. No, I don't have to do anything except literally be the frequency. I'll get little intuitions of where to put my hands. So it's like what you said, you got Reiki done, and that person really wanted to stay at your feet for a long time. I get that too, where I'll be at someone's shoulder or I'll be on their knee. And it's like, oh, wow, like this part of the body just really needs more light. It just needs more life force. And so I'm just going to hold it until it feels like it's time to move on. But it's essentially a practice of just holding space for that divine sacred energy to flow through however it wants to.
Yeah. And I think we can actually relate this back to anyone that may feel skeptical, is that like, I mean, we can find this in so many places that even if you're skeptical, I'm sure you felt the pinch of like an instinct, or like when you were talking about the solar plexus, I like instantly I'm like, I feel like that's like my gut feeling almost, or my like instinct. And I still relate that to an energy. It's not like it's a knowing, right? And so as you're saying that, I'm like, I feel like you're just like in tune with your knowing. And I think we all have had that experience of knowing something and not knowing where it came from. And so I was just thinking about like the people that come to see you, or just in general, like, where do you think this skepticism comes from, besides like what we learned about the church and it kind of being there? Like, what do you think that looks like for them? Or have they told you what that looks like and how that shifts?
I, first of all, want to say that I think skepticism is so healthy,
Mm-hmm.
and we shouldn't take things at face value. Like, you shouldn't just come and get a Reiki session from me because I tell you that this is what Reiki is. Like,
Yeah, right.
Right. I think that there should be a level of healthy skepticism. There should be research done ahead of time. Like, there should be that question of like, wait, what exactly is this lady doing? Huh? Like, tell me more. Like, that I think is important, because when it comes to energy work, like, we shouldn't rely on other people's experiences. We should rely on our own experiences, our own inner truth. And that's what I'm always trying to share with my clients, and always trying to help guide my clients to. It's like, I don't know what's best for you, but you do. And so I'm just here to hold that space for you to discover it for yourself. So I sometimes kind of enjoy when people show up very skeptical. And it's always kind of funny because I'm like, okay, well, you're skeptical. That's great. But you're also here in my office. So there's clearly some level of you that is open to this. Also, in general, people don't come to me originally for Reiki. I don't advertise that I do Reiki specifically. It's almost always after people have already worked with me with their nervous system. So they've already done breath work with me, they've already done embodiment exercises, polyvagal toning. They've already started to see the effects of what the physical tools and techniques that I offer can do. And I usually just sort of briefly mention like, okay, there might be some energetic stuff here as well. So if you ever want to get into that, we can. And that's usually when a Reiki session will happen. So it tends to be when there is already trust established. And I have kind of gotten to a point where I'm not super interested in working with people with Reiki that I haven't already established trust with the nervous system realms, because energy work is intimate and it does require some level of vulnerability. And so it is really helpful both to me and the client to have that level of trust established first, so that they understand that the way that I work is that I will never tell you who you are or what you feel. I will ask you and I will help to guide you to help you discover your own answers. But at the end of the day, you are here to discover yourself, to come into alignment with who you are, whatever the heck that means for you. And so typically by the time I have someone on my Reiki table, we have already done a fair bit of work. And now they are just curious, okay, how do we go deeper into this? I want to know what are some of the emotions or energies that might be locked in my energy system. What can I move today? What can be released today? What can be softened? And so we go into it together with just a very open sort of curiosity. And I sometimes, depending on the client, I will guide them to kind of be in the energy with me and like breathe through it and move it with me. Other times it's just a pure, holding of the space, and we let the Reiki go where it wants to go. But I guess at the end of the day, like, to answer your question about skepticism, I think that it comes from just not really trusting who you're working with. You're not really trusting like what the hell this even is. And that's okay. That's a good thing. Don't trust everyone with your heart. Don't trust everyone with your energy. Your energy is sacred. Like, trust the people who have earned your trust. And if something feels off, get the hell out of there. You don't need to, you don't need to override your instinct, I would say.
Yeah. Even as you're saying that, I'm like thinking how the receptivity to something like Reiki or energy work, like having nervous system regulation be sort of like that prerequisite. It sounds like for you is like, let's work on the nervous system. And then maybe there's like, then go to the energy field, because if your nervous system isn't regulated, you might not be able to either have like a really good experience or long-term effects of Reiki afterwards. It almost feels like, and I think that's what you do, right? You usually work with somebody on their nervous system first when they come in for a session with you. And then, like you said, move into more of that energetic field, because if our body is off, just working on the energy isn't gonna, maybe it'll fix the body, right? But like, you have to have kind of that both that to pair together, would you say?
Absolutely. I mean, that's been one of the most powerful things within my own practice, is the incorporation of breath work for a few weeks before we get into the Reiki and into the energy, because breath work is energy work. It's called pranayama for a reason. Like, prana, it is life force energy. And so if you can get your life force energy moving already with your breath, and then we get you on the table and we start working with the Reiki, it just complements each other so profoundly. And there's other things too that can help. Like, I did some somatic release work with people before we did Reiki. And then once we did the Reiki, it was like everything was able to release. Everything was able to come out. There was tremoring, there was crying, there was laughing, there was all the things actually being able to move out of the body, because we had done so much prep work first. And so what I'm finding is, like, going back to what we were saying earlier, our frustration with Christianity is like, there's one way to do it. Like, there's one path and there's one. No, when it comes to energy work, it's the exact opposite of that. I think that all of these different modalities, whether it's breathing or it's therapy or it's somatic release work or it's Reiki or whatever, the more that you can actually combine these tools together, and you can actually play with all of the sensations that come up as they arise, you can create so much more change, and you can create so much more balance when you are not only addressing the energy of the person, but also the physicality, the psychology, the nervous system. Like, what is the outer layers? What are the outer layers? And then also, what is the very, very subtle layer? And what is everything in between? Can we balance all of them? Because when you do, you find just this beautiful, like, calm and equilibrium that I think most people are kind of searching for when they come to this work in the first place.
Yeah. No, I think that's so true. And I think the layers, layering on what feels good for you, as you were saying that, I was like, it just feels like the more you do that, you also start to develop this relationship of trust with yourself, of knowing what's right for you. And I think that's something that we can play into, of like, what is true for me might not be true for you, but we both get to like use different modalities that work for us, that create like unity in the world in a sense. And everything is not going to be for you. And I love the idea of like, well, let me listen to what I need and what is going to work together. I think we got all of these like possibilities. Why not? You don't have to be just dedicated to one.
Exactly.
The one thing I
That's
did want to ask with this is that, like, there are so much, and it, like, do you have any walls up around a certain energy practice that you've heard about, or anything that you feel like I either had a bad experience with, or that, and again, everyone has their own judgment and will, like, as they are have free will to like try different things. Do you find that any like give you a little bit of a red flag?
Yes. So for me, I do not like any sort of energy work in which someone is telling me about myself.
Mm,
So I have had this come up a couple times. I have had people unconsensually go into my energy field and basically like tell me about my traumatic past lives, or
mm,
given me a tarot reading that was, the first word that comes to mind is inappropriate, but essentially I think that these people were trying to do me a favor, I guess, but
mm,
that particular type of information I do not find to be helpful. I feel that there is a vulnerability that happens when we are receiving energy work of any kind, whether it is a tarot reading, a psychic reading, whatever, what have you, however people are getting into your system. And I think that even if the practitioner senses something that is or was traumatic, either in this life or in a past life or whatever, giving an interpretation of that energy through the practitioner's lens can actually plant some pretty damaging seeds. And I personally just am not interested in that. And I do wish that practitioners would understand that just because they sense something or they have created a story in their mind about this person's past or energies in any way, it doesn't make them correct. There's no way to validate someone's past life experience or childhood experience or whatever. You as a practice, sorry, I'm getting a little fired up about it, but like, you as a practitioner have no right to tell other people who they are and what they've been through. They can
mm.
decide for themselves who they are and what they've been through. It's okay to say like, hey, I've noticed some really interesting energy in this area, and I'm getting the impression that it might be something from the past. Do you have any idea what that might be? Like,
Yeah.
that's fine. You can open a conversation, but I definitely have a very strong wall around practitioners who will be like, you were murdered at this point in time, this
Yeah.
many hundred years ago by this person, and now they're over here drowning, and they tell you this whole big story. And it's like, people don't, like, practitioners, I think, don't understand that when someone is in an energetically vulnerable state, it's very easy to plant false memories. It's very easy to accidentally hypnotize somebody. And so that's why I personally am always trying to take the most trauma-informed approach possible. And even if I'm sensing some sort of blockage or some sort of like emotional turmoil in somebody's energy field, I am very careful not to create a story around it, because what the hell do I know? I'm just an energy worker. Like, I'm just here to be a facilitator of whatever the Reiki wants to be. I'm not here to plant false memories in people's minds. And I definitely have a wall around practitioners who do.
Yeah, I haven't had that experience actually before. But I, like, as you were saying that, I was thinking like, I could see how that could create like some kind of like victimhood even too, in like the person of like, well, in my past life, this happened, so that's why I'm like the way I am now. And I always think like, as we know that we get to decide how we feel about ourselves and reprogram the way we see ourselves, we don't have to live in that. And so I feel like that could really mess up our perception of like you said, of ourselves, or the way our life should go. And yeah, I would think I would have a pretty big wall around that. I feel like I've had maybe in some readings where people have mentioned something where I'm like, I just don't relate, like I just don't relate to that. And I'm not gonna cling to something that I'm not gonna relate to. But if it does relate, maybe I'll sit on it or something, but trying not to label myself after someone gives me you know, not diagnosis, but a story or like a belief or whatever it may be, about, my history, I guess. So
Yeah.
I
And
can see that.
in my experience, it's very rarely helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, Nat. Is there anything else you want to tell us about energy work? Anything else you want to like debunk right now?
I think that, yeah, no, I think just to reiterate, like, it's good to have healthy skepticism, but it's also good to be open to things that you feel curious about. If there's something that is kind of calling to you and you're feeling drawn to it, and you just want to see, like, what could possibly be there for me? I definitely recommend working with someone that you trust, someone that you get a good feeling about. Listen to your gut. If it feels aligned, go for it. If it feels like, actually, I don't like how this person makes me feel or whatever, then definitely step back. One of the things that's really nice about working with someone like me, for example, is that I do have a very large array of tools. And so I accommodate people's preferences in a massive way. I have some people who work with me and we have done a Reiki session. They started having some sort of emotional release. And then at the end of it, they're like, okay, thank you for that. I'm not ready to go there. I don't actually want to release this energy yet. I'm not there yet. So if we can just focus on the breath work and the yoga moving forward, I'm like, that's completely fine. I'm more than happy to accommodate that. I have other people that I work with who don't even want to talk to me anymore. They just want to get on the Reiki table and just receive Reiki for an hour. And I love that. I'm all for that. And then I have people who really want to talk and they want to figure out what are the beliefs that are standing in their way, and how can we, shift some of this so that their lives can become a little bit easier and they can move forward instead of being stuck in past stuff. And so I'm very happy to help with that as well. So I think that energy work, while like we have focused primarily on Reiki, there's also the energy of the body, there's the energy of the mind, there's the energy of beliefs, and all of these things are intermingling. So it is nice to have a practitioner that can like float around and can focus on whichever like side of the diamond is shining that day, like whatever needs attention, or just preferences of the person. It can all be accommodated.
That feels really good. Really, really good. And I'll say the first lady I ever got Reiki from, it was such an instinctual pull to work with her. She was recommended by a friend, but like as soon as we connected, I was like, there was all this just we talked for like an hour. Again, like I think that's also a really important thing of like, let's sit down and have a conversation maybe first, especially if it's your first time with somebody. And we just like were so in sync, and like the work I was able to do with her, the trust was there like instantly. And she taught me how to do it on myself. And honestly, I use Reiki, and I'm not saying this will work for everybody. I use Reiki as a way for me to um, move my energy to align with traveling abroad to Peru. And like I never actually, I don't know if I've ever told you that before. But I told her about like a dream that I had of wanting to take this trip. And she taught me how to like work on my body. And I really didn't, I mean, I was kind of just playing around with the energy centers that I knew about, that she told me about. And I would just focus really deeply on this dream or this like goal, I guess, of mine. And I don't know, it helped me in some way shift either a belief or something. And that was over 10 years ago. And I do think it was a mixture of just belief work. Now that I'm like more familiar, energy work, and just like that focus on like already knowing that I have it. Played a big role. Again, like the layers of how this stuff can work for us, I think is so unbelievably um available. And I think that's why it's so exciting. I'm actually more excited. I feel like my walls are like shattering.
Good. Yeah. What are you feeling now?
Yeah, I think like I like, I still have skepticism around some stuff where I don't haven't experimented with any like hallucinogens and like things in that realm, which I don't know that is necessarily energy work. Sometimes it gets paired with that. I think there's still some mysticism that I have around certain ceremonies. But I do feel like a very deep calling, and I said this to the Reiki lady this week, of like redoing my Reiki and seeing where it wants to take me, because I do feel I'm in the realm where I am working with people's energy on a very intimate level, and I do use it in I attune to people, and I feel that like energy from people. That's how I usually bring up conversations, especially in my intimacy coaching. But I feel like there is a deeper level that I think something in me feels a little bit nervous about, or I haven't been ready for anyways, that I've been kind of dancing around. And now I'm like, okay, we're gonna go do something. I don't know what it is. Maybe finish my Reiki, get to the master level, or Qigong, or is it Qigong? I might be saying that wrong.
Yeah.
Kind of interests me a little bit, especially with the like movements in the body. I find being really slow can be really hard for me, and I find there's like a challenge there, and I'd like to maybe like explore that. So I don't know. I feel like I don't know like if I want to take that wall completely down, but I feel this like urge to like deepen, I guess. So
Perfect.
whatever that is.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's exactly how it should be. Like energy work, it should be empowering. It should be something that like feels good and maybe it sparks some curiosity. And at the end of the day, it's something that is just a tool for you to use in your life. And maybe you go deeper with it, maybe not, but it's something there that you can play with whenever you want. And I think that's a really beautiful thing.
Mhm. Well, thank you for this, Nat. I feel excited. I feel like I learned a lot of things, or reminded myself of things that I kind of knew before. And I'd really be interested, as people are listening to this, like what's coming up for you, because I imagine if you've never heard of this stuff before, or you're new to it, there may be like things coming up, and they may feel really like energetic, or it may feel like a really intense emotion or something, or really something intense in your body. Honestly, I would love to hear like what is happening for people, and I'm just curious. And so we will be connecting with you guys again soon. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and go break down some walls.
Thanks, Jill.
Bye.
Bye.